Michael Morales is the dark horse of the welterweight division.
Ladies and gentlemen, Michael Morales! Michael Morales smoked Gilbert Burns. He's now 18-0. If you're Jack Della Maddalena, you're keeping an eye on this guy. You just simply are, because he's on the new generation. Michael Morales is the young blood. He's 25 years old, and the power in the hands is ridiculous. If you're in the welterweight division, be careful.
With guys like Ian Gary, Joaquin Buckley, Shavkat Rakhmonov, and others getting all the spotlight at 170 pounds, Michael Morales is quietly making a name for himself after his first round KO victory over Gilbert Burns. And I'm here to tell you, I don't even think Michael Morales has a chance to be a top contender. I think he has a chance to be a champion. But quickly, before we get the video started, for those of you who may not know, I'm JuicyMMA. I make opinionative MMA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, hit that subscribe button, that like button, and that post notification bell. Also be sure to hit that join button for exclusive channel perks. But anyways, let's get into it. After having an 18-0 record, and after having some of the performances that Michael Morales has had, especially his most recent one, a first-round TKO over Gilbert Burns, it's pretty clear that Morales is starting to become something special. As when you look throughout his career, he has victories over Gilbert Burns, who I just mentioned, Neil Magny, Jake Matthews, Max Griffin, and others as well. And even if the level of competition isn't necessarily the highest, at least as of yet, outside of his Gilbert Burns win, at the end of the day, Morales is doing what he needs to, regardless of the competition that's set in front of him. He's getting early KOs or TKOs, or even in the few times where his fights do go to decisions, they are very dominant decision victories for Michael Morales. But a question that some of you may be wondering at this point is, why has Morales been able to be so successful thus far? Well, in my opinion, I think it comes down to a couple different factors, but the first factor I want to touch upon is his physicality. Because physicality is extremely important. When you look at the top level of MMA, whether you talk about champions or top contenders, most of these guys are obviously extremely skilled, but when you talk about the top champions and top contenders, of course, these guys are extremely physical as well. And when you look at Michael Morales, I do think he has that similar level of physicality to some champions we see in the UFC. And when I talk about physicality, I'm talking about three different things. I'm talking about a fighter's ability to hit hard and get KOs, I'm talking about a fighter's ability to take shots, and I'm talking about a fighter's physical strength in terms of offensively wrestling or defensively wrestling, or getting back up off his back once he does get taken down. And when you look at Michael Morales, I think he checks all three of those boxes off. As obviously he does hit very hard, he has a bunch of KOs on his record, of course most recently knocking out Gilbert Burns in the first round. He also has an ability to take shots, as he takes shots in most of his fights honestly, and he even took some huge shots in his most recent fight versus Burns, and he also has a really good ability to get back up once he does get taken down. As once again, in his most recent fight against Gilbert Burns, Burns was able to take Morales down once in that fight, but once he did take him down, Morales literally just stood right back up, showing off his physical strength. So I certainly do think Michael Morales has a tremendous amount of physicality, and enough physicality to one day become a UFC champ. But another reason for why I think Morales has a chance to be a champion one day is due to his overall striking. Because when you watch Morales fight out there, he definitely isn't the most technical guy, and he also isn't the most conventional fighter out there, but at the end of the day, he does a really nice job at striking with the tools that he does have. Of course, he does have great KO punching power, and he fights like that, but he also has a tremendous reach, and he fights very well utilizing that reach. Whether it's utilizing those long jabs, whether it's utilizing those long right straights, or even at times utilizing those very wide and long hooks that he does use to punch around his opponent's guard, Michael Morales definitely does a great job at utilizing that length. And even though, as I said, it's not necessarily the most technical striking out there, and it's not even the most advised striking when you talk about those very wide hooks that he throws, at the end of the day, Michael Morales just has a very good understanding of striking. He knows when he can throw these big power shots in order to not get countered, but most importantly, he has great distance management. When you watch a lot of his fights out there, he does a great job at utilizing those long strikes to a point where he can hit his opponents, but his opponents can't hit him. And although some of the strikes strikes that he does throw aren't necessarily the most technical. I think his distance management is probably the most technical aspect of his striking game. But the next question that some of you may be wondering at this point is, why do I think Michael Morales is going to become a UFC champ one day? Well, I feel this way for a few different reasons, but the first reason I want to touch upon is his potential improvement. Because as I touched upon before, yes, this guy does have some really good things that he does in the striking. Yes, he does have a lot of power. Of course, as I mentioned, he is very physical. But as I also said before, he isn't necessarily the most technical guy out there. Now, obviously, there are fighters that have a lot of success without being technical, and maybe Michael Morales is going to be one of those guys. But I just think sometimes when you watch this guy strike, he's a little bit too wild. And even so, he's been able to have the amount of success that he's got at this point. So just imagine if he's able to tighten some things up, be a little bit more technical on the feet, a little bit more patient on the feet, how good this guy could potentially get. And of course, this potential also extends further than just his striking. In terms of his wrestling, he hasn't showed all that much of it, but as I touched upon a bunch of times before with the Gilbert Burns fight, with some of his other performances, he is very physically strong, and he is able to stop a lot of takedowns and get right back up if he does get taken down. So if he's able to work on his offensive wrestling and potentially add that within his game, just imagine how good and how dangerous this guy could become in the long-term future. And he's still obviously extremely young out there. He has a lot of time to grow. He has a lot of time to improve. And as I said, he's already a very good fighter. In my opinion, almost a top 5 guy in a stacked 170-pound division. So obviously, I think Michael Morales has a very bright future. But let's quickly matchmake against some of the top fighters at the welterweight division. So starting with a potential Ian Garry fight, I think this is a decent fight for Morales. I think Ian Garry is very good. I think he's underrated. I think his footwork is tremendous. I think he's very defensively sound. But at the end of the day, a lot of times he tends to pull back on shots and look to counter from there. But for Morales, due to the fact that he has an 80-inch wingspan, I do think he'll be able to land on Ian Garry and possibly surprise him. And if he's able to land on Ian clean, I do definitely think he has enough power to knock Garry out. Now, a potential matchup versus Leon Edwards. Leon is a very skilled fighter. He is certainly a tough matchup for Michael Morales. But even with that being said, I think Morales will still be able to land on Edwards, at least eventually. And if he is able to land on him, of course, you can knock him out in that very moment. Or even if he's not able to, Leon definitely does struggle with the mental a little bit. And I think he could look very dejected after losing a dominant round to Morales. And then Michael can start to take over from there. Now, a potential fight versus Sean Brady. This one might be the most controversial out of all of them, but I also think Morales could potentially beat Sean Brady as well. Brady is a tremendous wrestler. His takedowns aren't amazing, but once the fight does get to the ground, he has tremendous top pressure. And yes, we haven't seen Morales' takedown defense or even his ability on the ground tested all that much, although we've seen it a little bit. I do think due to the fact that Morales is going to be significantly bigger than Sean Brady, and he has shown the ability to have insane physical strength, I do think there is a real possibility that Brady could be stuck on the feet versus this guy. And if he's stuck on the feet versus this guy, I certainly will favor Michael Morales to find a TKO or a KO victory over Sean Brady. Now, obviously, all those fights that I did mention are still very competitive. Brady could certainly beat Morales. Leon could certainly beat Morales. Ian Machado Garry could certainly beat Morales. But at the end of the day, I think those are all very competitive fights. And as I touched upon before, Morales is still very young out there. So I definitely do think he's going to have a very bright future, and we'll see how quickly he climbs to the top of the ranks. But I do think eventually he'll be a UFC champ at 170 pounds, or he potentially could even move up. He's a very big 170 pounder, so maybe he moves up to 185 later on in his career. Of course, we'll see what happens, but I definitely am very high on the potential career of Michael Morales. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think Michael Morales has a chance to be a future UFC champion, or do you not think so? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy, check one of these two videos popping up now. And until the next time, peace out, guys.